Emily Harper stood in her luxurious penthouse, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting a golden hue over the sprawling skyline of the city. She peered out of the floor-to-ceiling windows, her heart swelling with pride at the life she had built. As a successful entrepreneur, she had worked tirelessly to rise above the challenges that had come her way. Yet, in that moment of triumph, a familiar anxiety simmered beneath the surface, tugging at her thoughts. Her phone buzzed insistently on the polished marble countertop, snapping her back to reality. With a quick glance, she saw it was a message from David, her estranged husband. "Can we meet?" the text read. A twinge of anxiety twisted in her stomach, but she brushed it off. Surely they could work through anything that might have been bothering him. After all, they had shared a life together, and despite the pain of recent years, she still believed in the possibility of resolution. "Just a conversation," she murmured to herself, trying to bolster her resolve. She quickly responded, agreeing to meet at their favorite cafe, a quaint little place that had once been a sanctuary for their shared dreams. As she prepared to leave, Emily glanced in the mirror, adjusting her hair and smoothing down her blouse. She wanted to look composed, confident, someone who had her life together. But beneath her polished exterior, her heart raced. Memories of laughter, love, and betrayal flickered through her mind like old film reels, each frame a reminder of the life that had unraveled so suddenly. When she arrived at the cafe, the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee and pastries enveloped her, yet it felt different this time. The vibrant chatter of patrons seemed muted, as if the world was holding its breath. David was already there, seated at a corner table, his fingers nervously tapping on the wood. He looked up as she approached, his expression a mix of anticipation and dread. "Emily," he said, his voice low and hesitant as she took a seat across from him. The distance between them felt palpable, a chasm carved out by betrayal and hurt. "David," she replied, steadying her breath. "What's this about?" He took a deep breath, his gaze flickering away for just a moment, as if he were searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot lately about us," he began, his voice faltering. "About everything." Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "What do you mean?" she urged, trying to keep her voice steady. I've fallen in love with someone else," he stammered, the confession hanging in the air like a heavy fog. "A younger woman. I know this is hard to hear, but I can't keep pretending." The words landed like a punch to her gut. Emily's heart raced, her breath caught in her throat as she struggled to maintain her composure. "You're leaving me for someone else?" she asked incredulously, the sting of betrayal igniting a fire within her. "And what about Oliver?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, as if the very mention of their son weighed him down. "I need to take him with me. I want to be a proper family with her. Family," Emily interrupted, her voice rising. "You think abandoning your family is what makes a family. You're making a huge mistake, David." His eyes met hers, and for a fleeting moment she saw a flicker of regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered, but the words felt hollow, devoid of the sincerity she desperately sought. Emily felt her world collapsing around her. The cafe, once a place of warmth and love, now felt cold and unwelcoming. She looked out the window, watching the city bustle by, oblivious to her heartbreak. "Is this really what you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, tinged with desperation. "I don't know," he admitted, running a hand through his hair, "but I can't go on pretending. I haven't been happy for a long time." "Neither have I," she shot back, her chest tightening with anger and sorrow. "But we could have worked through this. We could have tried." David shook his head, the finality in his expression sending her heart spiraling into despair. "I've made my decision, Emily. I just thought you deserved to hear it from me." Tears threatened to spill from her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So that's it? You're just going to walk away?" He nodded, his gaze dropping to the table. "I'm sorry." With a heavy heart, Emily stood up, her chair scraping against the floor as she took a step back. "You're breaking our family," she said, her voice trembling. "You're breaking me." As she walked away, the weight of his betrayal settled heavily on her shoulders. The vibrant cafe faded into a blur behind her, and she stepped out into the bustling street, feeling utterly alone. The world continued to spin around her, while her own life felt irreparably shattered. When Emily returned to her penthouse, the familiar surroundings felt foreign and oppressive. She wandered through the darkened rooms, each one filled with echoes of laughter and memories of a family that was no more. The photos on the walls, snapshots of happier times, taunted her. She could almost hear Oliver's laughter ringing in her ears, and it cut deeper than any wound. Sinking onto the plush couch in the living room, she buried her face in her hands, allowing the tears to flow freely now. The pain was overwhelming, yet a flicker of defiance ignited within her. She refused to let this define her. As the night deepened, Emily found herself staring out at the skyline once more, the city lights twinkling like stars in the vast night sky. She felt a sense of resolve building within her. She would not allow David's choices to dictate her worth or her future. "I will rebuild," she whispered into the silence, her voice steadying with each word, no matter the cost. With a newfound determination, she vowed to rise from the ashes of her broken heart, to reclaim her life and her identity. The betrayal had cut deep, but she would emerge stronger. She would pour all her energy into her work, into creating a life that was wholly her own. Emily knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face whatever came next. The darkness might have swallowed her for a moment, but now she was ready to fight back. Emily Harper's ascent in the business world was not merely a career move, it was a lifeline. In the swanky office that overlooked the bustling streets of downtown, she poured herself into her work, her laptop glowing with the numbers and figures that had become her new reality. The city below was alive, but for Emily, it felt like a distant world. As she busily typed, her mind was a whirlwind of memories, of laughter, love, and the shattering betrayal that had once defined her life. "Emily, can we go over the quarterly projections?" Her assistant, Mia, called from the doorway, breaking her reverie. Mia was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with an infectious enthusiasm that often reminded Emily of the person she used to be, before David, before the heartbreak. "Sure, Mia, let's review them," Emily replied, forcing a smile as she closed her laptop. She grabbed her notepad and followed Mia to the conference room. The walls were adorned with accolades, awards for innovation and excellence in entrepreneurship, and Emily had worked tirelessly to earn each of them. It was a testament to her resilience, but also a reminder of the journey she had taken to get here. As they sat down, Mia began to outline the numbers. "These projections show a 30% growth from last year. If we keep this momentum, we could consider expanding our services internationally," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "That's fantastic, Mia. I want to make sure we're prepared for any challenges that might come with expansion," Emily replied, her heart swelling with pride for her team. They spent the next hour analyzing data, strategizing, and dreaming big. Emily felt invigorated. The pain of her past seemed to fade, if only for a moment. As weeks turned into months, Emily's hard work began to pay off. She earned accolades and recognition, but the emptiness of her personal life remained. Despite her success, she often found herself staring at the empty chair across the dining table, memories of Oliver's laughter echoing in her mind. Each achievement was bittersweet, a reminder of what she had lost. One evening, as Emily prepared for a gala event that promised to be a turning point for her business, she stood in front of her mirror, adjusting her elegant dress. "You can do this," she whispered to her reflection, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts, and it was Mia dressed in a stunning red gown. "Wow, you look incredible. Ready to dazzle them tonight?" Mia beamed, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Emily managed a smile, though her heart raced with apprehension. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's show them what we're made of." The gala was held in a grand ballroom, filled with the whoosh of elegant gowns and the clink of champagne glasses. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and conversation, but Emily felt like a fish out of water. She was there to network, to promote her business, yet all she could think about was the void that David's absence had left in her life. "Emily, over here," a familiar voice called, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Sophia, a fellow entrepreneur and someone who had become a close friend through their shared experiences of heartbreak and ambition. Sophia was vivacious, her smile infectious, and Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her as she approached her friend. "You made it. I was worried you wouldn't come," Sophia said, pulling Emily into a warm hug. "I almost didn't, but I need to be here. For the business," Emily replied, forcing her voice to sound confident. "Let's grab a drink." "You need to unwind," Sophia suggested, leading Emily toward the bar. As they ordered their drinks, the two women shared stories of their struggles, their laughter mingling with the chatter of the crowd. "You know, I admire you, Emily. You've turned your life around after everything that happened," Sophia said, her voice sincere. "It takes a lot of strength to rebuild." Emily felt a mix of gratitude and sadness. "I've had to. I couldn't let him win, you know. I had to find my worth again." Sophia nodded, understanding the weight behind Emily's words. "You're more than just a successful entrepreneur, Emily. You're a strong woman who deserves happiness. Don't forget that." As the evening progressed, Emily found herself enjoying the moment. She mingled with industry leaders, shared ideas, and even received compliments on her recent achievements. The energy in the room began to lift her spirits, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a glimmer of hope. However, the night took an unexpected turn when she spotted David across the room, his presence jarring her back to reality. He was with a group of people, laughing and seeming so at ease. The sight of him sent a rush of emotions through her, anger, sadness, and an undeniable ache of longing. "Emily, are you okay?" Sophia asked, noticing the shift in her demeanor. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just surprised to see him here," Emily replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "Do you want me to distract you? We can go mingle somewhere else," Sophia offered. "No, I need to face this. I can't let him control my feelings any longer," Emily said, taking a deep breath as she steeled herself. She walked toward David, her heart pounding with each step. "David," she said, her voice calm but firm. He turned, surprise etched across his face. "Emily, I didn't expect to see you here," he replied, his tone neutral. Yet there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, perhaps. "Neither did I. We seem to be moving in the same circles now," she said, crossing her arms defensively. "Yeah, well, it's a small world. How have you been?" he asked, his casual demeanor betraying a hint of unease. "I've been busy. You know how it is," Emily replied, her tone clipped. The memories of their past flooded her mind, the moments that had once brought her joy now serving as reminders of betrayal. "Oliver is doing well," David added, a note of pride creeping into his voice. "He's thriving." Emily felt a pang in her chest. "I wish I could see him more often," she admitted, her voice softening despite herself. David nodded, his expression shifting. "I know things have been complicated between us. I just wanted to say that I'm trying to be a better father." "Being a father isn't just about showing up when it's convenient for you, David," she snapped, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's about being present, every single day." "I'm trying, Emily. I really am," he said, the sincerity in his voice catching her off guard. "Trying isn't enough," she replied, shaking her head. "You made your choices, and they have consequences." As their conversation continued, they felt the weight of their shared history pressing down upon them. Emily realized that despite the hurt, there was still a bond, one that tied them together through Oliver, and one that couldn't be easily severed. But as she looked into David's eyes, she also saw the cracks in his facade, the struggles he was facing within his own life. Meanwhile, across the room, Sophia observed the exchange, her heart heavy for her friend. She could see the tension between Emily and David, the unresolved feelings swirling like a storm in the air. Just then, Sophia's phone buzzed, pulling her attention away from the couple as she stepped outside to take the call. The gala continued to swirl around Emily and David, the music and laughter becoming a distant hum. It was a moment suspended in time, a fragile balance of anger, love, and the desire for reconciliation. Suddenly, Emily's phone buzzed in her purse, breaking the tension. She glanced at the screen and felt her heart drop. It was a message from Oliver's school, alerting her that Oliver had fallen ill and needed her. "I have to go," Emily said abruptly, her pulse quickening as she processed the news. "Oliver needs me." "Emily, wait!" David started, but she was already moving toward the exit, her heart racing. As she stepped into the cool night air, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past and present collide. This was her chance to confront the pain, to show her son that she would always be there for him, no matter what. Emily rushed through the hospital corridors, her heart pounding in her chest. The antiseptic smell of the place mixed with her anxiety, making her feel queasy. Each step took her closer to the pediatric ward where her son, Oliver, was being treated. As she approached the room, she could hear the soft beeping of machines and the murmur of nurses attending to patients. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath to steady herself. It had been far too long since she had seen Oliver, and the thought of him lying there, vulnerable and sick, filled her with a deep sense of dread. Pushing the door open, Emily's heart dropped at the sight of her son. He lay in the small hospital bed, pale and fragile, with tubes snaking around him. The sight of his tousled hair and the familiar way he clutched his stuffed dinosaur brought tears to her eyes. She rushed to his side, kneeling beside the bed, and reached out to touch his hand. It was warm but far too thin. "Mom?" Oliver's voice was weak, but hearing it felt like a lifeline. He blinked up at her, his blue eyes clouded with illness but still filled with love. "Hey, sweetheart," she managed to say, her voice trembling. "It's me. I'm here." "Why are you sad?" he asked, his innocent question breaking her heart. "I'm not sad, Oliver. Just worried about you," she replied, forcing a smile. "You're going to be okay, right?" He nodded slightly, though she could tell he was putting on a brave face for her. "I just don't feel good." "I know, baby. But the doctors are taking care of you." She brushed his hair back from his forehead. "I've missed you so much." Oliver's expression shifted, a hint of confusion crossing his face. "Where's Dad?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. The mention of David left a bitter taste in her mouth. He'll be here soon." She tried to keep her voice steady, knowing that Oliver needed reassurance, but the thought of seeing David again filled her with a mix of anger and sadness. Moments later, David appeared at the door, his posture tense and guarded. He looked different, wearier perhaps, as if the weight of their shared history was beginning to take its toll. Emily felt a surge of resentment as she watched him walk toward them, but she forced herself to appear composed for Oliver's sake. "Hey, buddy," David said, his voice softening as he reached the bed. He leaned down to kiss Oliver's forehead. "How are you feeling?" "Not good," Oliver replied, his small face crumpling. "I want to go home." Emily exchanged a glance with David, the unspoken words hanging heavy between them. They both knew that their son's desire to go home was a longing for normalcy, for the family there used to be. David cleared his throat. "The doctors are doing everything they can. We'll be out of here soon," he assured Oliver, but Emily could see the worry etched on his face. "Is it bad?" Oliver asked, his voice so small it broke Emily's heart. "No, it's just a little illness. You just need some rest," David said, attempting to sound optimistic, though Emily could sense his inner turmoil. As they sat in silence, Emily felt a storm brewing inside her. She couldn't help but think of the day David left her, the betrayal that shattered her world, and the pain of watching him walk away with their son. It felt surreal to be in the same room with him again, sharing the same concern for their child, yet feeling so distant from the man she once loved. "David," she finally said, breaking the silence, "we need to talk about everything." He looked up, his expression shifting to one of defensiveness. "Now? Here?" He gestured around the hospital room, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, here. Our son is sick, and we need to figure out how to handle this together," she replied, her tone firm but calm. "We can't let our issues affect him." David sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as a sign of his frustration. "I know that, Emily, but it's not easy for me either." "Is it not?" she challenged, feeling a surge of anger. "You left. You chose a different life. You took our son from me." "Don't make this harder than it has to be," he shot back, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself. "I'm trying to be a good father. Being a good father would have meant being there for us. "For me and Oliver," she said, her voice steady even as her heart raced. "Instead, you ran away." David opened his mouth to respond, but Oliver's small voice broke through their tension. "Can we not fight, please? I just want to go home," he pleaded, his eyes wide and fearful. Emily felt a pang of guilt wash over her. "You're right, Oliver. We're sorry," she said softly, taking his hand in hers. "We're just worried about you, that's all." David nodded, his expression softening as he turned his attention back to Oliver. "We're both worried, buddy, but you're going to be okay. The doctors are taking good care of you." As they sat together, a fragile truce settled over the room, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning. The past loomed large between them, filled with unresolved feelings and unspoken words. It wasn't just about Oliver anymore. It was about the choices they had made and the lives they had built apart. After a while, Emily stood up to stretch her legs, needing a moment to breathe. She stepped out into the corridor where the fluorescent lights flickered overhead. As she leaned against the wall, she felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The emotional toll of the day was heavy, and she closed her eyes for a brief moment, trying to collect her thoughts. Suddenly, she heard David's voice, raised in frustration. "No, I can't just drop everything. You don't understand what I'm going through," he said, his tone edged with irritation. Curious, Emily moved closer to the door, listening intently. "You think I'm still in love with her? That's ridiculous," he continued, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm trying to be a good father here, and all you can do is question my feelings?" Emily's heart raced as the words sunk in. Was he talking to his girlfriend? What did she mean by questioning his feelings? The tension in his voice hinted at deeper issues, and she felt an unexpected surge of anger. "I don't care if you're with her, David. Just focus on our son," he said, his voice low but intense. "I can't deal with this right now." Emily felt her resolve harden. The idea that someone else was trying to dictate how David felt about her stirred something fierce within her. She had spent too long feeling inadequate, too long waiting for his validation. As she stepped back into the room, she caught David's eye, and the moment felt electric. "Who are you talking to?" she asked, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. It's complicated," he replied, his expression shifting to one of concern. "Complicated?" she echoed, crossing her arms. "You're still involved with her, aren't you?" "It's not what you think, Emily," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of defense. "I'm trying to do right by Oliver." "Then stop playing games. You need to choose what's important to you," she shot back, her anger flaring. "Because I refuse to be another person in your life that you can just walk away from when it gets hard." David's gaze hardened, and for a moment they stood there, locked in a battle of wills. But amidst the tension, something shifted within Emily. She realized that she had spent far too long allowing David's actions to define her worth. She was not just a victim of their past. She was a mother, a businesswoman, and a woman who had survived. "I'm not going to let your choices dictate my life anymore," she said, her voice steady, determined. "I'm taking control, David. You can either support that or not." With that declaration hanging in the air, she turned on her heel and walked out, feeling lighter with each step. She could sense the weight of the past beginning to lift, and for the first time in years, she felt empowered. Her worth was not tied to David or their history. It was rooted in her own resilience and the love she had for Oliver. As she exited the hospital, she knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it. For herself, for Oliver, and for the future she would build, one step at a time. Emily Harper stood in front of the expansive windows of her office, the New York skyline stretching out before her like an elaborate tapestry, each thread woven with stories of ambition, dreams, and, at times, heartbreak. It had been several years since her life had unraveled, but she had rebuilt it piece by piece, transforming her pain into fuel for her relentless pursuit of success. As she prepared for her upcoming international expansion, she reflected on how far she had come. She had become a formidable figure in her industry, known not only for her business acumen, but also for her resilience. Her phone buzzed on the mahogany desk, breaking her reverie. A message from Sophia, her close friend and confidant, flashed across the screen. "Are you ready for the conference tomorrow? You're going to crush it." Emily smiled, the warmth of their friendship a comforting reminder of the support system she had cultivated. "Thanks, Sophia. I'll give it my all," she replied, her fingers dancing over the screen. As the day of the conference dawned, Emily donned a sleek, tailored suit that exuded confidence and professionalism. She looked in the mirror, adjusting her hair, the reflection of a woman transformed staring back at her. Gone was the fragile, heartbroken wife. In her place stood a self-assured entrepreneur ready to take on the world. With one last deep breath, she stepped out, determined to make her mark. The conference hall buzzed with energy, filled with industry leaders, innovators, and aspiring entrepreneurs. Emily navigated through the crowd with a grace that belied her nervous anticipation. She exchanged pleasantries, shared laughs, and engaged in discussions, all the while keeping her focus on her presentation looming ahead. As she stood backstage, waiting for her turn, Emily glanced out at the audience. Her heart skipped a beat when she spotted a familiar face among the crowd: David. He sat there, his expression unreadable, but she felt the weight of his gaze heavy with unspoken history. Memories flooded back, a bittersweet reminder of the life they once shared. She clenched her fists, steeling herself against the tide of emotions threatening to pull her under. "Emily Harper, everyone," the host announced, breaking through her thoughts. She stepped onto the stage, her heart racing but her resolve firm. As she launched into her presentation, she spoke passionately about her journey, the lessons learned, and her vision for the future. Despite the tumultuous feelings swirling within her, she commanded the room, her voice steady and confident. After the presentation, she felt a mix of exhilaration and relief. The applause echoed in her ears, and she basked in the recognition of her hard work. But as she stepped down from the stage, she saw David approaching her, his features tense but determined. "Emily," he began, his voice low, almost hesitant, "can we talk?" She crossed her arms defensively, her heart pounding in her chest. "What do you want, David?" she replied, her tone sharp, betraying none of the vulnerability she felt inside. "I just want to discuss Oliver," he said, his eyes searching hers for understanding. "He's been asking about you." At the mention of their son, a wave of emotion washed over her. "You think you can just waltz back into my life and act like everything's fine?" she challenged, her voice rising slightly. "You took him away from me, David. You made your choice." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered well. "And I regret it. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to be a better father. I thought you should know that." Emily took a deep breath, the hurt of their past mingling with the hope that perhaps he was sincere. "Being a father doesn't erase what you did," she replied, her voice steady but her heart racing. "You have to earn my trust back." David nodded, his expression pained. "I want to. I'm here to support Oliver, and if that means working with you, then I'll do whatever it takes." The conversation hung in the air, thick with unresolved tension. Emily felt her defenses weakening, but she couldn't allow herself to forget the betrayal. "We'll talk about Oliver," she said finally, her tone more clipped than she intended. "But don't expect me to open up to you. Not now." He looked down, a shadow of shame crossing his features. "I understand," he replied quietly. "I just hope one day we can be civil, for his sake." As he turned to leave, Emily felt a mix of anger and confusion. Part of her wanted to scream, to tell him how much he had hurt her, while another part wished for the family they once had. But she knew she had come too far to let him back in so easily. The days that followed the conference were a whirlwind of activity for Emily. Her business was gaining momentum, and she was filled with new ideas and opportunities. Yet, David's presence lingered in her mind, a constant reminder of the unresolved issues between them. With each passing day, she found herself torn between her commitment to Oliver and her desire to keep her distance from David. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing contracts, Sophia burst through the door, her face lit up with excitement. "Emily, you won't believe what I just heard." Emily looked up, curiosity piqued. "What is it?" "There's a rumor going around that David is having problems with his new girlfriend. Apparently it's getting pretty messy," Sophia said, her eyes wide with intrigue. Emily felt a flicker of satisfaction at the thought of David facing the consequences of his choices, but guilt quickly followed. "I shouldn't take pleasure in that," she murmured. Sophia plopped down in the chair across from her. "Why not? He made his bed, and now he's lying in it. You deserve to know he's not living some perfect life without you." Emily sighed, rubbing her temples. "I just want to focus on my business and Oliver. I don't want to get caught up in his drama." But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that David's struggles might be a sign of something deeper, a chance for them to confront the past and perhaps find a way forward. The thought was unsettling, but also oddly compelling. Days turned into weeks, and Emily tried her best to maintain a professional relationship with David for Oliver's sake. They met occasionally to discuss their son's activities, navigating the awkwardness with a fragile civility. However, it felt like walking a tightrope, balancing between their shared history and the present reality. One afternoon, as she picked Oliver up from school, she spotted David waiting outside the gates. He looked different, more haggard, with dark circles under his eyes. As their eyes met, she felt a pang of empathy, despite everything that had happened. "Emily," he called out, his voice strained. "Can we talk for a minute?" She hesitated but nodded, stepping away from the throng of parents and children. "What is it?" she asked, her tone cautious. I just wanted to apologize for how things have been. I know I've hurt you, and I can't change that," he started, his voice thick with emotion. "But I want to be a better father to Oliver. I want to be there for him in ways I wasn't before." "Words are easy, David," she replied, crossing her arms. "What about actions? How can I trust you?" "I understand," he said, his expression earnest. "I'm trying to figure things out. I don't want to be that guy anymore. I want to support you both." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of their shared past hanging heavily between them. Emily wanted to believe him, but trust was not easily regained. She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the flood of emotions. Just focus on Oliver. That's all that matters right now. As she turned to walk away, David called out softly, "Emily, please, don't shut me out forever." She paused, feeling the enormity of the moment. "I'm not shutting you out, David. I'm just protecting myself. And Oliver." With that, she walked away, her heart racing with conflicting feelings of anger, sadness, and a hint of hope. The journey ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but one thing was clear. She was no longer the woman who had once been shattered by betrayal. She was Emily Harper, a force to be reckoned with, determined to shape her own destiny regardless of the shadows of her past. Emily Harper sat at her sleek glass desk, her eyes scanning the busy streets below her penthouse. The city pulsed with energy, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within her. It had been a few weeks since she had seen David at the conference, and their interactions had set off a cascade of emotions she had thought were long buried. Despite her resolve to remain distant, the complexities of co-parenting with him had forced her to confront the remnants of their past. As she clicked through emails, her mind drifted back to Oliver's school play, where she had seen a glimpse of the father David was trying to be. The day had been bright, filled with laughter and children's voices, but it had also been a battleground for her heart. She had watched from the audience as David knelt down, whispering something to Oliver, a smile lighting up their son's face. It was a moment of connection that stirred something deep within Emily. Seeing David so engaged, so present, had filled her with nostalgia, and for a fleeting second she had allowed herself to hope that he could change. But just as swiftly as that hope blossomed, it was crushed by the memory of her own pain. The betrayal, the abandonment, it all came rushing back like a tidal wave, threatening to drown her in its depths. Emily shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts that clouded her mind. She was a successful businesswoman now, a self-made millionaire who had clawed her way back from the abyss. She wouldn't let her heart be swayed by fleeting memories or the charm that had once ensnared her. "Mum, can we go to the park after school?" Oliver's voice broke through her reverie. He stood at the door, backpack slung over one shoulder, his face bright with anticipation. The innocence in his eyes reminded her of the joy she had felt before everything fell apart. "Of course, sweetheart. We can have a picnic, just like we used to, Emily replied, her heart swelling with warmth at the thought of spending time with her son. Yay! Can we bring sandwiches and juice? His excitement was infectious, and for a moment, all her worries faded into the background. Absolutely. I'll make your favorite, she smiled, feeling a sense of normalcy returning. But as she prepared for their outing, the thought of David lingered in the back of her mind. She knew he would be there too, sharing the same park with them, and the idea filled her with both dread and anticipation. Later that afternoon, the sun hung low in the sky as Emily and Oliver settled on a checkered blanket in the park. Children's laughter echoed all around them, creating a soundtrack of innocence that tugged at Emily's heartstrings. She watched as Oliver ran off to play with his friends, the boy she had fought so hard to keep in her life, and a smile danced on her lips. "Hey, Emily," a familiar voice called out, pulling her from her thoughts. She turned to see David approaching, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, an uncertain smile on his face. "David," she greeted, trying to keep her tone neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I thought I'd come by and see Oliver," he replied, glancing over at their son, who was busy chasing after a ball. "He looks happy." "He is," Emily said, her protective instincts flaring. "He's been doing well in school and his soccer practice." David nodded, and for a moment they stood in silence, watching their son. The tension between them was palpable, the air humming with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. "Can we talk?" David finally asked, his voice low, almost hesitant. Emily hesitated but nodded, leading him a few steps away from the blanket, where they could still keep an eye on Oliver. "What do you want to talk about?" "I know things have been complicated since we last spoke," he began, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. "I've been trying to be a better father. I want to be involved in Oliver's life more." Emily crossed her arms, a defensive posture she couldn't help but adopt. "You've had years to be involved, David. Where was all this concern when you walked out on us?" "I know," he said, his voice tinged with regret. "I messed up. I was selfish. But I want to make it right. I want to be there for him. I see how much he needs both of us." The sincerity in his eyes pierced through her defenses, and for a moment she felt the walls she had built start to crumble. "It's not that simple. You can't just decide to be a father after years of being absent." "I understand that," he replied, his tone earnest. "But I'm willing to fight for it, for both of you. I want to be part of his life, Emily. I want to co-parent properly." Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, to trust that he could change, but another part screamed in protest. "And what about your girlfriend?" she asked, her voice laced with bitterness. "Is she okay with you suddenly wanting to be a father again?" David's expression shifted, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. "We've had our issues. Things have been rocky between us, and I don't think I'm in the right place to be in a relationship right now." "Is that supposed to make me feel better? You're saying you're ready to be a father while still entangled with someone else?" "No, that's not what I meant," he protested, his frustration evident. "I'm trying to be honest with you, Emily. I want to focus on Oliver. I want to be a better person for him." "Better? You mean a better person than the one who left his wife and child?" She couldn't keep the sarcasm from her voice, her anger bubbling to the surface. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he admitted, his voice heavy, "but I'm trying. Can you at least give me a chance to show you that?" Emily looked away, her heart racing. The idea of allowing David back into her life, into their lives, felt like standing on the precipice of a great danger. She had fought so hard to build a life without him, to become the woman she was now. "I can't just forget the past, David," she said finally, her voice softening. "It's not that easy." "I don't expect you to," he replied, "but I hope we can find a way to work together for Oliver's sake. I want him to have both of us in his life, and I want to prove to you that I can be better." As they stood there, the world around them fading into the background, Emily felt the pull of their shared history, the flickers of affection that still lingered in the corners of her heart. But just as she was about to respond, a voice called out from behind them. "David, there you are." Emily turned to see David's girlfriend approaching, her presence like a dark cloud. The moment hung heavy in the air, and Emily's stomach twisted with a mix of anger and jealousy. "Hey, I was just..." David started, but she cut him off. "I was looking for you. We need to talk," she said, her eyes darting between him and Emily, the tension palpable. Emily felt her heart race, a protective instinct flaring up. She turned to David, her voice steady but firm. "You should go. This isn't the time." "Emily, wait," David began, but she shook her head, unwilling to let this moment of vulnerability be shattered. "Just go," she said, her tone brokering no argument. As David turned to follow his girlfriend, Emily felt a mix of relief and frustration. As they walked away, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. The encounter had stirred up so many emotions within her, and she felt the walls she had built around herself beginning to crack. But as she looked at Oliver, laughing with his friends, she reminded herself of the promise she had made to protect him, to shield him from the chaos of their past. Later that evening, as she sorted through old family photos to help Oliver with a school project, she stumbled upon a picture of their family at the beach, sun-kissed and happy. The memory washed over her like a wave, filling her with both warmth and sorrow. She could see the love they once shared, the dreams they had built together. But alongside it was the shadow of betrayal, the reality of what David had done. Emily placed the photograph down, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She had fought so hard to reclaim her life, to redefine her worth outside of her marriage. But in that moment, she couldn't shake off the lingering feelings that David had ignited once more. As she tucked Oliver into bed that night, she kissed his forehead, whispering promises of love and support. But as she closed the door to his room, she couldn't shake the questions that loomed over her. Was there a way to reconcile the past without losing herself in the process? Would allowing David back into their lives only reignite the pain she had fought so hard to overcome? With these thoughts swirling in her mind, Emily knew that the path ahead would not be easy. She had built a fortress around her heart, but as the echoes of their shared past lingered, she found herself questioning whether it was time to open the gates, just a crack. Emily Harper sat at the dinner table, a sense of unease settling over her like a heavy blanket. The soft glow of candlelight flickered between her and her son, Oliver, who was animatedly recounting his day at school. She smiled at his enthusiasm, but her mind was elsewhere, still reeling from the last few weeks of unexpected encounters with David. Just as she was about to ask Oliver to pass the bread, David walked in, his expression a mixture of hesitation and determination. "Hey everyone," he said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He took a seat across from Emily, and the air grew thick with unspoken words. Emily's heart raced as she recalled their last interaction, the charged energy that had lingered between them. "Dad, guess what? We did a science project today, and I got an A," Oliver exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with pride. David's gaze softened as he turned to their son, the warmth of his fatherly affection evident. "That's amazing, buddy. I knew you could do it," David replied, ruffling Oliver's hair. Emily watched the two of them, a pang of nostalgia washing over her. It was moments like these that made her heart ache for what they had lost, a family unit that once felt so whole. As they finished dinner, David cleared his throat, the tension palpable. "Emily, can we talk? Just the two of us?" His voice was steady, but she could sense an underlying anxiety. "Sure," she replied cautiously, glancing at Oliver, who was now engrossed in his dessert. "Let's step outside." They moved to the balcony, the cool evening air a stark contrast to the warmth inside. David took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. It's about us." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Emily crossed her arms defensively. "What do you mean, David?" There was a tremor in her voice, a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I'm leaving my girlfriend," he blurted out, the words rushing out as if he had been holding them in for too long. "I've realized that I made a huge mistake. I want to be a family again, Emily. I want us to try." Emily's heart raced, her mind racing to process his admission. "You can't just waltz back into my life after everything that's happened. You made your choice." "I know, and I'm sorry. I was manipulated into believing things about you that weren't true," he confessed, his eyes pleading. "I let her fill my head with lies about your life. about how you didn't need me, how you were thriving without me. But I see now that it was all a ruse." A wave of anger washed over Emily. "So now you want to come back and play happy family? You think it's that easy?" "I don't expect it to be easy. I just want a chance to make things right," David said, desperation creeping into his voice. "I miss you, Emily. I miss us." "Do you really? Or do you miss the idea of us?" she challenged, her heart pounding in her chest. Before David could respond, the sound of Oliver's laughter drifted from inside, a stark reminder of the stakes at play. Emily took a step back, her mind racing. "I can't just forget what you did," she said softly, her resolve wavering. "You took my son away from me. You broke our family." "I know," he whispered, his voice filled with regret. "But I want to fix it. I want to be there for you and Oliver in every way I can." Just then, the door swung open and Sophia stepped outside, her expression unreadable. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." She trailed off, sensing the tension. "No, we were just talking," Emily said, trying to mask her unease. "About what?" Sophia's curiosity was piqued, her eyes darting between them. Before either of them could respond, Sophia's expression shifted. "Emily, there's something I need to tell you. It's about David's girlfriend." Emily felt her stomach drop. "What about her?" Sophia hesitated, glancing at David before continuing. "I've been in contact with her. She's been feeding David lies about you, twisting the reality of your life to make him think you were thriving without him, that you didn't care about him or Oliver anymore." David's eyes widened, disbelief etched across his face. "What? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he demanded, anger flaring. "I didn't know how to bring it up," Sophia replied, her tone defensive. "I thought it was just a phase for you, that you'd come to your senses." Emily felt a mix of betrayal and clarity wash over her. "So she was manipulating you all along," she said to David, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. "I can't believe this," David said, running a hand through his hair. "I was so blind. I thought I was making the right choice for Oliver, but I see now." His voice trailed off, the weight of realization crashing over him. "David, this isn't just about you," Emily said, her voice firm. "Our son deserves the truth, not the lies she fed you." David nodded, his expression hardening. "You're right, I owe him that. I owe both of you that." Sophia stepped forward, her voice gentle. "You need to have a conversation with him, Emily. This is your chance to clear the air and start fresh. But it won't be easy." Emily took a deep breath, her heart pounding. "I know, but I'm tired of being hurt. I want to rebuild, but it has to be on honest ground." David stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "I promise I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I want to be the man you deserve." Tears pricked at Emily's eyes as the gravity of the moment washed over her. "It's going to take time, David. Trust isn't something you can just reclaim overnight." "I understand," he replied earnestly, "but I'm willing to fight for it, for us, for Oliver." As they stood there, the weight of their shared history hung between them. But for the first time in years, Emily felt a spark of hope igniting within her. David's sincerity was palpable, and the possibility of a new beginning flickered like a flame, fragile yet powerful. "Okay," she said finally, her voice steady. "Let's take it one step at a time. For Oliver." David's shoulders relaxed, and a small, genuine smile broke through the tension. "Thank you, Emily. I won't let you down this time." As they stood together, united in their resolve to face the challenges ahead, Emily felt a sense of empowerment washing over her. Together, they could confront the past and forge a new path, not just for themselves, but for Oliver as well. Sophia watched the exchange with a knowing smile, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. "I'll leave you two to talk. Just remember, communication is key," she said, retreating to give them space. In the quiet that followed, Emily and David stood side by side, gazing out at the city lights twinkling in the distance. The night was still, but the air was charged with possibility. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but together they were ready to take the first steps toward healing, trust, and ultimately, a renewed family bond.